Hello. All right, this is the first time that I'm doing a live breakout and on this platform. So my goal is that everyone who joined gets what they want out of this session. And since my psychic powers aren't working today, I don't know what drew you to this breakout, but I am good at multitasking, which means I can read the chat window and do multiple things. So what I want to know from you all is, what questions do you have? What is it about a conversation around what's happening in the retail world that makes you excited to come to this session? And frankly, what's going to keep you engaged so you're not clicking out of here 2 minutes later? So if you can do me a favor and in the chat, type in what some of your questions are, that would be great. What I am going to do is, the other thing that's great about this platform is we can call other people up on stage, on this virtual stage. And so I'm going to start it by doing so with Ben Kaufman, who you just heard speak earlier, who's the founder of Camp Stores. And before that, he founded Mophie and Quirky. And he and I are passionate retail geeks, I guess, and we like a good, candid conversation. So I'm going to call Ben up, and we're just going to start chit-chatting about the state of retail. But what I'd really, really like is for you all to put questions in the chat so that I make sure that we make this productive and everything. So let's see, here's Ben.
Here.
Hi,
It
Ben.
all works.
It all works. I know.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Where are you?
Home. I've been home. I'm home. We're home. We just stay at home now.
What state are you in?
I'm across the street from our store in Manhattan.
Got it. All right. So before, I'm going to jump to the questions in the chat. So everyone write questions. Anyone who knows, either one of us knows that we don't have a filter. Ben has even less of a filter than I do, which I don't know is saying much. But before we get to the Q&A, I have a question for Ben. And P.S., we didn't rehearse any of this. I just dragged him into doing this with me a few minutes ago. Ben, you speak at a lot of conferences. You do talks, thought leadership. What's one question that you've never been asked that you would want to answer?
Oh, we're doing that game. You have to ask me what my bar mitzvah theme was. That's the question.
The what?
What my bar mitzvah theme was.
What was your bar mitzvah theme?
Dentistry. Ben's World of Dentistry.
That's answering the question of what's a fun fact we can't find out about you on Google.
Oh, was that the wrong game? Was I playing the wrong game?
Yeah, you're playing the wrong game, but that's okay.
Oh. I thought I figured that was the game we were playing.
Okay, I'm going to start with a question. I'm just going to go right into Q&A. But guys, this is a choose your own adventure session, and I want it to be engaging and substantive. So literally unfiltered, ask whatever question. I'm going to start with a question from JR, who's an amazing human who works at Salesforce. Would love to know from you how you saw content play a role in this year of disruption. Ben?
I mean, everything became content, right? Like we couldn't leave our homes, and so we were consuming everything online. So we had to figure out how to contentify everything. I mean, if I think about what we did at camp, we usually delivered our experiences through tactile spaces. And once COVID hit, it was how do we turn experiences into content so that they can be delivered on demand, meet customers where they are, and so on and so forth. So can you
share what you did with Walmart? Because I think that's such a badass example of the convergence of content and commerce in a compelling and substantive way.
Yeah, so together with a company called Echo, we created a online digital summer camp called Camp by Walmart, which was 100 pieces of interactive content with all shoppable. So right in the Walmart app, you could watch a craft episode hosted by Jessica Alba or Neil Patrick Harris or whoever these people were, and you could go in and shop for those craft products and get them delivered to your door, and then actually do the project live. So it was a great platform that connected interactive content with with product lists and one-click shoppability.
And how is it? Are there any takeaways or things that you've seen from that, or stories that you've heard from the Walmart side that have either surprised you or that people would find interesting?
Yeah, I mean, we had a big spike over Halloween, actually. So we originally launched the platform over the summer, and over Halloween, we created a bunch of branded content episodes with Hershey's, where you could basically turn Hershey's products into basically snack-based activities, where you could like turn chocolate bars into Draculas and things like this. And there was a real demonstrable sales lift off of that, because it wasn't about just selling candy; it was about selling something to do together as a family. And I'm a bit of a like broken record on this thing, but that's to me the our purpose in the world is helping families answer the question, what should we do today? And this took something as mundane as a candy bar on Halloween and turned it into an activity.
That's also interesting. Like when you think about things like Halloween that are so experiential, a bunch of different questions are, with COVID impacting the way we live, and you look at something that like Story was and like camp is, that's so, immersive and experiential. I think one great example, and don't worry, I'm not going to turn this whole thing into a camp question, but just a Q&A session. But I think these two questions go together in terms of, what you recently pulled out of a hat 2 weeks before Christmas with white elephant parties. I think everyone's trying to talk about VR and AR and how do you make experiential, immersive in a digital world. But I think you did a nice, simple spin on it with what you rolled out with white elephant. Will you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so office gift exchanges obviously couldn't happen this year, and even the offices that did them, they were pretty tedious, right? The gift giver would have to order something online, get it to their house, figure out who it was going to go to, then go to the post office and ship it out. And so we created an online virtual gift exchange platform, the Camp White Elephant Party. People could create their own room, invite their friends. Everyone bought a gift, and then there was a live, basically trading game where people flipped over cards and were able to steal cards from one another. And then when the game was done, we shipped the right gift to the right person. And this was like a big light bulb moment for us, because we realized that we're so focused on making our stores experiential. But when you look at e-commerce isn't experiential at all. It's just seek and destroy, like click that, deliver it to my house. But White Elephant was like a glimpse that we could turn e-commerce into experiences as well.
Yeah, I think it's super excited. I tried some of the video games. I won't call out any of them, but in the fall, there were some fashion video games that I had a very hard time, and they felt kind of lonely. I think it was almost the opposite of a social or communal experience. So I'm going to start. There's a bunch of different questions, so they're in no particular order, but if you asked a question, I will answer it. So Kabir writes, what are the key KPIs used to determine how successful a location is? Given the business model of Camp and Story, the legacy KPIs for stores doesn't seem as relevant. Would love to hear how you benchmark success. I'll take a quick stab at that. So, it's a little different because Story as a freestanding business is no longer, and it's at Macy's now in a different form. But from day one, it was never, to me, sales per square foot is archaic and dead. That those met, and in 2011, when I started Story, it was never the intent to look at just gross margin and sales per square foot. So for me, KPIs were a lot around customer acquisition and kind of looking at the metrics we apply in a digital ecosystem, CPA, all the different metrics that we're used to from marketing, really pulling that over into retail. So, and also looking at diversified revenue streams. We introduced sponsorship as a second and meaningful revenue stream. So, it was both identifying KPIs outside of the transaction and more around customer acquisition. And then the second bucket was, identifying new revenue streams. So it wasn't just about sales per square foot. But anything else you would add to that, Ben?
For us early on at camp, it was clear that the real metric, the only real metric that mattered was loyalty. People coming back to the store over and over again and becoming obsessed by it. As a young brand with one location at that time, now we're 5, just seeing the same families come back over and over every week, it meant to us that people were weaving camp into their family schedule, which was clear signal that we were onto something, even if they didn't buy every time that they were there.
So along the lines of kind of the store evolving and thinking about it a little differently, and some of the things you were talking about with White Elephant and whatnot, is a question comes in from Jeremy Lampert. Hi, Jeremy. What are the most important changes that need to happen in physical stores to make them more engaging in the years ahead?
Is that for you or me? That's for you. Oh, it's for me.
I can answer it.
Yeah, I mean, we're both going to give the same answer, so you might as well do the talking. It's your session.
Well, the funny thing is, Jeremy asked a couple different questions, so it jumped to the other one, the other one, which you can answer after me, is how do you scale the stores in concept, or
Sure.
to scale more digital? So
Yep.
I'll let you handle the scale question.
Sounds good.
And then in terms of what stores need to do, listen, the thing I'm obsessed with, you heard, I know my talk got cut off a bit earlier, is not like sexy. It's not glossy technology or whatever, but I think is service. Like, it doesn't sound sexy, but I think it's so important. Like, we have these things called human beings, and they work in physical spaces. And I think it's been a forgotten resource. And I think that there's an opportunity to reimagine what that store experience looks like, and almost think of it to some degree. Performance might be the wrong word. I could just see that being misinterpreted, but I'm just saying, like, some hybrid of, an improv class meets Psych 101. I just think that, like, the store experiences are so blasé, and I recently went to an amazing store and I was blown away by the merchandise and the design and everything about the experience. But the store staff was like a bunch of wet rags standing around. And it just took away from the magic of the experience, as you had all this beautiful stimulation. And then, you had people just standing there. So I don't know. That's not really, but
no, it is. That's the thing. That's the stuff. It's people.
It's people.
It's people.
And it's a product. I think we need to once upon a time, there was a merchant who had a point of view, and it was a version of self-expression, and it was unique and it was different, and there was discovery and fun and joy. And now you walk into a store and you can find all the same product either next door to that store on your phone. Anyways, I will stop my.
Yeah, and then on the scale retail is media thing, which is the term Rachel coined very long ago. I think that the way you do it is just think about the fact that you're helping people answer a question, whatever your retail concept does, and that question needs to be answered both through physical locations and digital delivery. And if you look at how we're doing it at camp, camp.com is an editorial destination that helps families just scroll and figure out like what's a fun activity to do today. In the stores, there we're obviously delivering a specific experience. And then for brand partners, people that consider us a media company, we're building bespoke experiences that fit our brand promise, but also deliver their message. And so all of these things kind of scale up together.
So as I'm going through the questions, we have a couple different questions that are somewhat related around, let's see, I want to attribute them to the right person so they get a shout out. So there's two different somewhat related questions. Ryan asked, with mall attendance on the decline pre-COVID and now during COVID, what role do you foresee large retail spaces playing in the industry? And then someone asked earlier, I'm trying to find who it was, so I apologize because it keeps on changing as I scroll, but the other question was, what's the role of department stores in the future? So I can't find who asked that first one, but I guess big stores, department stores, somewhat connected. So, or do you think that there's a role for department stores in the future? I guess I'll take a stab. Oh, here we go. Robin. Sorry. Robin's question was, would love to know your thoughts on whether there's still a reason for department stores to be relevant, and what's the one thing you would suggest they must do? Yes, I think that there's a role for department stores. I think, I hate to repeat myself, but I guess maybe I'm not repeating myself since there was the tech glitch earlier. I always say, what's an experience you can give someone that they can't get on their couch? And, once upon a time, department stores answered that by aggregating different categories and brands together. But just because they answered it 100 years ago doesn't mean they shouldn't update it. And I just think that there needs to be kind of a constant answering and an evolution of that question of like, but why, right? You think of a 5-year-old always asking like, why? Like every day people should be asking like, why should I exist? And that's going to maybe change what the department store experience is. I think, it's a common answer, and I'm not unique in sharing Selfridges, but like, that's such an epic case study of a brand that like 20 years ago reinvented itself and is as relevant today as it was 20 years ago. I also think that has something to do with them also being private. But so Robin, to answer your question, I do think that there's a role for them. I can't say that I've seen one yet clearly articulate what that role is in a compelling and meaningful manner. But hopefully they'll figure it out soon. And then, Ben, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or you spend a lot of time thinking about malls in terms of the growth of camp and what your thoughts are around malls.
I mean, I think malls could be playgrounds. Like malls are large, enclosed indoor spaces. And if you think of them as a canvas and you do try and reinvent the role they play in the community's life, I think you could do really fun things in malls. I mean, for Halloween we did a scavenger hunt across all of the Hudson Yards Mall, where kids had to run around and find different doors, and they were automatically dispensed candy and had to solve a puzzle. And that to me was a glimpse that like if you use these spaces more as like entertainment delivery platforms and less like utility based shopping. You could do some interesting stuff within them.
And what about the other question you were going to answer that Jeremy had asked was about scale? What does scale look like?
I think I answered it a little bit, and as a tag on to the previous answer, but I think scale has to be, traditionally more doors. And I do think that especially right now, there's an opportunity to leverage what's going on in the world to grow store count. But really figuring out how to make sure we're always meeting the customer where they are. Sometimes they might not want to come to the store. They might want to just have the experience you deliver digitally. And I think all of these things need to work together. And we're trying to make it happen. We'll see.
Okay, a couple questions came in. Kate, I'm not even trying last names here because I'll probably botch them up as someone who has a complicated last name. So Kate writes, it feels that most retailers know they need to change but don't understand where to start. What's the first step you'd recommend to a retailer to get unstuck from a traditional approach? My answer to that would be, kind of two different things. Is first, answer the question, like, where am I going and why, right? Like, it's all about the customer at the end of the day. So first make sure there's clarity and consensus around what you're getting unstuck from, because there's a solid chance that people sitting around a boardroom table will have different answers to that question. So first and foremost, make sure that there's like consensus and agreement around what needs to change or evolve. And then from there, to put a plan in place, in my opinion, you can't create something new or drastic change within an old framework and system. So the job titles and silos and functions of yesterday are different than the ones for tomorrow. So there might be certain roles that don't exist within one's management team for what the new plan needs to be, or there might be roles that need to go away that are less relevant. So it's really reimagining the form and the functions that are needed to imagine whatever that new strategy is. I'm not a fancy management consultant, but that would be what my answer is. I don't know, Ben, if you have anything that you would add to that.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I just want to say hi to Kate. She used to work at Corky.
Oh. Peter asked, what are your thoughts on experiential solutions at scale in retail as opposed to unfiltered, almost unlimited flagship build? I don't know. I think that question is, do you go flagship or experiential? I don't know.
I mean, they're the same thing, right? They should be the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm understanding your question, Peter, if you want to clarify it. I don't know. Like when I look at what Lululemon did in Chicago, to me, that's an experiential flagship. When you think about Nike in New York, that's an experiential flagship. So, I mean, you could ask the question, are flagships still relevant? And I think if they're interesting and experiential, sure, but you have to answer that but why question. Like no one needs another place to just buy stuff. But if I'm misunderstanding the question, let me know. All right, other questions. There's a bunch of them. I see an old. All right, it's fun seeing old friends and faces on here. Okay. I'm going to read a couple comments coming in. Stuart Silverman writes, it's all about the team. Problem today is that we haven't had the way to measure the behaviors of store associates, no way to hold team responsible for acting in ways that reinforce the brand. True, but I would argue that you could hold them accountable based on performance, and with the right tools for training and development, you're going to see stronger performance. So I think that's a pretty measurable way to do so. We did a lot of that at Story. Mark writes, prior to COVID, we at Grand Bazaar, New York City, organized special themed events at our weekly market. Let's see, now with no market open and a basic website, we're looking for partners. What spontaneously comes to your mind about how we should go about this? With no market open and a basic website, we're looking for partners and innovative ideas to go online and help make the small independent merchants.
I mean, I think what Mark's asking is given most of his business was physical and brick and mortar and pop-up based, like how do you like summon that to the internet and bring partners into the fold and sell sponsorships? And I think there was a question later on about sponsorships as well, but that would be my answer for Mark is, come up with some compelling online program and find a brand that aligns with your values and go at it together.
And then Stuart asked, kind of as a follow-up to the comment on store sales associates, which is how do you get them more enthusiastic? I don't know. I mean, if you went to Story or Camp, it would be pretty hard to find counselors at Camp or storytellers at Story that were more enthusiastic than the teams we had. I mean, I don't know what, Ben's magic is, but I know, from day one at Story, we were obsessive about training, and even post-acquisition with Macy's, we created a 3-day program called Know and Tell to really look at how you scale, service and engagement in a compelling way.
That's a good name.
Know and Tell.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Megan gets credit for that. Shocker. but our no and tell program worked, and we were able to take 200 people who had never met each other and give them the same high touch training that our one store had. And I think, there were a couple different things that we did that I can share that may or may not be helpful. We did shared incentives. So it wasn't just sales goals for sales goals' sake, but they were goals that would require teamwork. And they would also sometimes be games. And so if we had some merchandise that was slow sellers or complicated, we'd have games and contests and different prizes so that it was kind of fun and different. And it was almost like they had their own internal challenge. And then I think the other thing is around training, we had different kind of modalities, so to speak. So we had peer-to-peer training where our team members trained each other. And then we would bring in outside trainers if a product was highly technical or complicated or extremely expensive and required high touch training. We would bring in outside folks to train. So I think mixing it up, like it's on you as the leader or the owner to look at your sales colleagues and associates as your customers, because if they aren't engaged and enthusiastic, then you're not going to then have that experience for customers. I don't know what you would add to that, Ben.
Yeah, all of those things. And the only other thing I'd add is that too often these training programs and corporate like cultures basically don't allow associates to be themselves, don't allow them to express themselves, don't allow them to like impart their opinions about products and brands and so on. And one of the things that we love about camp is we're lucky to we want to hire people that like engaging with kids and engaging with families, and they might have a special talent, like they might be a magician or a singer or a balloon operator or whatever they are, and we don't want to train that out of them. We actually just want to give them the stage, and the stores are a stage, and we want the associates to perform with their eccentricities and with their special talents, and not have like training programs just make them into like corporate robots.
Yeah,
and that really comes through to the customer, I think.
Also, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this camp secret, but I'm going to share it and maybe get in trouble with Ben after. But one of the most genius things, I look at his face. It's like he rarely looks worried.
I don't know what it is. I don't have many secrets.
The tables are turned. You're normally the one putting me in the hot seat. But anyways, no, one of the things that I thought was super smart was when you were opening camp, you placed ads looking for camp counselors, which are your store associates, and looked at playbill. You looked for actors.
Yep. Especially easy now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely something that worked in New York. I mean, as we went to Texas and other states, like it became a little harder to find these people. But special, talented people with immense creativity exist everywhere, and we just have to put the effort in to find them.
Yeah. So related, so Taylor writes, do your companies have a plan on how you can utilize the in-store staff online? I feel like one of the main things missing from online shopping is the personal shopper helper experience, and could be something that can be integrated online, but isn't in the current, other than chatbots. That's more for you than me. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so our store counselors host our virtual birthday parties and our digital experiences. Our camp counselors we have something called the gift counselor, which is kind of a personalized gifting service. And as we navigated our way through the zigs and zags of 2020, we really tried to leverage the stores for everything they were. Like, number one, obviously for distribution of online sales. Number two, for delivery of digital experiences and hosting of live events. But I think, we're 10 or 11 months into this, and there's so much more to be done.
Yeah, I think too, like, to that question, Taylor, I'm going to put an example in the chat. I just actually met this founder the other day. It's super interesting. I haven't played with it that much myself, but it's a startup called Curated, and it's super high touch service experiences around, it looks like the link I shared is around camping gear, but whether it's snowboards, and it's not a chat bot you're communicating with, it's an actual person. And it has a lot of interesting people involved in it. So I just thought I would, Ben smirking for some reason, I would share it as something
No, it's
interesting.
cool. I'm smiling because I like it.
It's something interesting and worth looking at around your question. So there's a few different questions around sponsorship. Brittany wants to know, can you speak to unexpected partnerships with retailers like Camp and Kroger? And then there was another question that came in from Jeremy as a follow-up to that around sponsorships. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think you should go first because you invented this whole retail sponsorship stuff.
Oh, here's Jeremy's question. They keep on scrolling. Can you talk a little bit about the role of sponsorships? Stores get all kind of money from brands. Should they think differently of how to use this money differently? So few stores are even thinking about sponsorship, which to me is still backwards and archaic. And I can't believe more people aren't really thinking of other ways to monetize.
That's an important distinction though, like sponsorship versus shopper marketing money. Stores always got the shopper marketing money, but it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's circulars and stuff like that. But it's the sponsorship stuff is what Rachel pioneered.
Thank you. But yeah, no, I'm not talking about end cap fees for Walmart. Yeah, no. This is. No. But I think, there's both digital and physical traffic that should be monetized as media. And it's mind-blowing to me that retailers still aren't doing it at scale. I mean, for me back in the day, when we did start doing it, it was really kind of, Jeremy also mentioned something about Starbucks. I don't know what the latest number, pre-COVID, Starbucks was having 100 million people in their stores a week or whatever the number was. And so to me, the insight was, why is no one really monetizing that audience as media? And so the way we approached it was a few different things. It was both looking at an important additional revenue stream that we would need, to do the ambitious retail experience that we wanted. If I was going to give up square footage in a store about health and wellness so you as the customer could do virtual reality meditation, how am I paying for that? And then when we look at how to finance that, who brings authority and authenticity to the subject matter of health and wellness? Oh, health insurance. So Cigna was our sponsor. So on the one hand, I always like what I call unlikely bedfellows, who are brands and people you can never imagine together. And the second they're together, you don't imagine them apart. And Cigna gives authority and authenticity around a subject matter around health and wellness. And for them, it was about, learning and research and development and accessing customers in new ways. And there were, Scott's Miracle Grow, there's a handful of different brands when you're like, what? One of my favorite ones when I was at Macy's was we did something with Dick's Sporting Goods. Another retailer paid us, 6 figures to do a partnership. And you would kind of say but why? But it was Outdoor Story, and it was about, sports and doing different things, and Dick brings authority and authenticity to that conversation. So for me, it was twofold. It was looking about how it added value to the customer experience while simultaneously providing a very important revenue stream for my ambitious retail goals. What would you respond?
And I was just going to say, and we are following Rachel's playbook. I met Rachel when she was just starting Story, and when we started Camp, it was clear that sponsorship was going to play a key part in our ability to match our ambition for the brand. And we've been lucky to have some amazing partnership programs that really are, to Mark's point, win-wins for both sides. When I think of what we're doing with Ally Bank, which you wouldn't think of anything with us, we do these amazing surprise and delight virtual birthday parties and crafting events where we deliver a free virtual birthday party to a family, but then Ally Bank sends that family an amazing box of toys that was unexpected. And obviously they get customer lead gen from that. When I think of what we did with Kroger, We've run a number of programs with Kroger. They sponsor our cooking camp theme digitally. We've done trucks that drove around Texas delivering activities and games and ice cream all around the state in the heat of COVID. Everyone wins from these things. We're able to grow our brand as camp, and they're able to get their message out there and acquire new customers.
So would love to hear you two riff a little about what you would do differently if you took over a big box like IKEA or Best Buy. How would it look different, physical and digital? Well, how much time do you have? Ben and I always said, like, if someone gave us keys to an empty department store, what would we do with it?
Yeah, hand us the keys.
I don't know, Ben. What would we do differently if we took over a big box like IKEA or Best Buy?
It's interesting. Like IKEA, I probably wouldn't do much differently than they're doing. Like
Right.
that's an awesome thing. Like that's a beautiful thing. Best Buy might be a little bit different, a little bit more on the discovery of new products and technologies and service. And department stores, I think, are the ones that are the really blank canvas that need to be completely
What would you do differently with, like, off the cuff, what would you do differently with department stores?
I mean, they have to be entertainment. They have to be entertainment. Like, the products need to be woven into the entertainment of the theater of the store. Like, it's the reason why you always bring up Selfridges is the store is a theater, and then you come in and you watch the show, and then you buy things along the way. And no U.S. department store is a theater. And I think that's where we would start if the two of us were doing that kind of thing.
And would we do them in malls, or would we do them elsewhere, or would we do both?
I honestly don't think it matters, because when you create a beautiful show, an amazing show, people will come to the show.
Yeah,
I do not think it matters, as long as there's convenient parking.
Where would we do our first one?
Somewhere weird. Definitely somewhere weird. Yeah.
Now
really make them work at coming,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
At one point, I remember years ago, I loved the idea on the High Line in New York. There was this amazing space that was available, and you could see it from the High Line, but you had to get off to access it.
Yep.
And I love the idea of being so close to something that you could almost touch, but you had to make the effort to get off, to go back on it, like really having to work for it.
Yeah, I love that.
It's part of the theater, right? Like,
yeah.
I think CJ, in a digital ecosystem, there's this artist who Ben and I are obsessed with, to put it lightly. And she just, Ben, will you drop her Instagram handle?
Sure.
But if you follow this woman's work, she's an insanely talented artist. But what's fascinating about her isn't just her art, it's how she releases her art. And each collection is like its own award-winning retail strategy. And so,
they're all commerce games. They're just mind games, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And she turns art into theater. She does. When she does an exhibit, it's not just like hang your drawings on the wall. She creates giant bouncy houses and fills them in warehouses. She creates a building out of Lego bricks. She turns them into a thing you have to go see. And you might not even be into art, but the activity of going there is tremendous.
Yeah, she recently released a series where every 5 minutes she released a different piece of art every 5 minutes over the course of an hour. And she didn't release the price until, so that was also a lot of fun, where like every 5 minutes there were 100 editions available of a piece, but you wouldn't know the price. And one of them was $0, another was $100, but another one was $2,000. I don't know. It's just an interesting,
Crazy.
Anyone who's here listening to us yap away, I'm assuming likes discovering new things. So there you have it. Rachel, if you could go back in time to 2011, this is from Albert, before Story, or Ben, before Mophie, what's the one bit of advice you'd give yourself as young entrepreneurs? Oh, a lot of advice. On the one hand, though, like as I'm thinking about, I should have that answer top of mind, but as I'm thinking about what that answer would be for what's that one piece of advice, there's also a part of me that's like, ignorance is bliss. And if
you had to learn it. Yeah.
You had to, I always said Story for me, the hardest thing was leading, learning, and doing those three things at the same time, because you're learning on the clock because you're doing something that hasn't been done before. But on the flip side, people are coming to you for answers. I think if I had to do it all over again, I would probably have more of a team in place than I did. But again, it's kind of a luxurious question to answer, because hindsight 2020, I didn't know what I was hiring for. I mean, when we opened Story, we had 2 retail storytellers, sales colleagues. Christmas time at Story, that store on any given day had 20 to 30 people working. So I clearly was off by a multiple of 10 there. What advice would you give yourself?
Just, it's gonna be a long ride. and a buck win. I mean, I listen, I feel like I've lived many entrepreneurial lives, and in some weird way, the journey always makes sense in hindsight, but it never makes sense in the moment. Right. The fact that Mophie led to Quirky, and Quirky died, and then I learned a shit ton at BuzzFeed, and that led me to be inspired to start Camp. Like, when you start anything, you don't think that like things are going to succeed or fail or what. You just are passionate about them, and I don't know. I like the.
You know what I've never asked you, that why not do it with an audience, is when you think back to Mophie and Quirky, right? Like, is there anything with either of those brands now that there's some time in between both of those chapters that you feel like was unfinished business? Like, I really wish I got to do X when I was there.
No, on Mophie. I was done. I was just like, this is the product that's going to succeed, the juice pack. Like, I want to go build this invention platform. Like, I was so compelled to do Quirky that I was done with Mophie, and I don't have any regrets selling Mophie, outside of the financial regrets of selling Mophie, which probably should be way greater than they are. And then at Quirky, I have so much that I wish I could have done differently, and I feel like Quirky's main thing wasn't that I didn't do something; it was actually that I did too much. So it's not regret around I wish I could have gotten to this. It's actually regret around like I should have just waited until I did that, because then it probably wouldn't have died as much. It wouldn't have died as much, I think. Yeah.
What do you think? So you and I both, I would say, were kind of birthed into this retail world. We have 2 fierce, strong, badass moms who are big retail pioneers in their own right. What do you think, your mom, what was the biggest kind of gift or takeaway that resonated with you growing up and being around her, and how that's influenced your career?
Just work ethic, I think. I mean, she cared so much about the way the stores she created things for. My mom was in fixturing, which is if you think about it, a very mundane industry to be in. My mom made point of purchase displays, but she made the best point of purchase displays there were. She was competitive, and she worked her ass off, and it meant everything to her. And she was the first woman in her family. She was the first person in her family graduating from college, and she just like worked her ass off and cared so much about the result of the work and the customer experience, and that definitely stuck with me. How about you?
Um, so the funny thing is, mine's like a two-prong answer. Shocking because I can be verbose. But, those who I know here know this part of my story, which is, my mom trained with Giorgio and Joel when they started Dean and DeLuca in the early 80s. And she's been in the gourmet food business for a zillion years. And so she took me to the Jacob Javits Center for my bat mitzvah favors wholesale when I was 12 years old. But it wasn't that she took me, people might know that part of the story, but what is magical about my mom, there's many magical things about Sheila Shechtman, but like when we would go to a booth, right, she had her questions, like for you, like you talk about work ethic. It's like my mom, there was no decision she made without thinking of the customer, right? Like we would see a bag of gourmet chips and she'd say, oh, the perceived value isn't there. Like the price point's too high based on the proportion of air in the bag to chips. And so she looked at, it wasn't just one thing. She had to taste the product to make sure it tasted amazing. The packaging had to be badass design. And it was also looking at perceived value. So the idea that it was like a holistic kind of experience and thinking through the customer, not just, oh, are they going to be drawn, to the packaging, but is it going to be a full rewarding experience? And then I think the second thing to that, she did gift baskets for years. And in hindsight, each gift basket was like a story. So whether it was a new baby or a birthday or a condolence or a travel gift box, she would really merchandise things based on narrative. And then all the other factors that I shared about what she would ask when we were at the gift show. So I think it was just a very comprehensive and holistic understanding of merchandising and customer experience would probably be that answer. So this is the last call for questions. There's a couple that came in. So I'll catch up on those, but last call questions, nothing's off the record, ask anything.
It's been pretty tame.
I know, it's been super tame. No one's
asking
anything really provocative. I'm kind of waiting for a provocative question.
I haven't made Rachel uncomfortable yet.
Ben, this is a question from your buddy Kate. When I think
I wrote back to that one already. I think in the chat.
Okay. Why did FAO Schwartz fail?
Yeah, I wrote back to that one. I thought we were running out of time, so I figured I'd just type it out.
Oh, I see. While I'm talking, you're writing. Do you run any of camp ideas by your kids?
Yes, of course. Rocco is our harshest critic. He this will be a fun one. My last story here to end on. So we did something at camp. We have virtual events now. So we did a virtual event called New Year's Eve, which is basically like instead of counting down at midnight on New Year's, we count down at noon. Not a new concept, but we did a big program around it this past a couple weeks ago. And so Rocco's in the virtual New Year's Eve, and the game that we played in the virtual New Year's Eve was we have to fix the ball. The ball needs to drop, and there's different parts. And so the virtual event was about finding all the different pieces and putting the ball back together. And so Rocco went to camp the next day, and he was like, "Where's the ball? We put it back together. Where's the ball?" And it was a complete miss on our part because the store staff knew nothing about the virtual event, because the virtual event was a virtual event, and that's done by the virtual experience team and not the store events team. And so it was a big miss because it wasn't integrated. And Rocco was the one that like pointed it out for us. He's like, "Well, if I fixed the camp ball, why isn't the camp ball at camp?" And I thought that was a great lesson for us as we go into 2021 is we're doing all this digital stuff now. That's great, but it has to translate to the stores because people meet us in both places.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good insight. Well, actually related to that, Roxanne wants to know how you create training for your stores.
We have a few different types of training programs. We have like product-based training where vendors usually lead that, and that helps us learn how to demo their products and demo different toys and gifts that we sell in the shop. We have general, like we call it magic door training, which is just how to talk to customers and how to operate our magic door and deliver the magic of camp. And we're constantly evolving and making the training program better. I believe Rachel's sister Jenny is helping us reinvent that as we speak. So looking forward to it continuing to improve.
Yes, Jenny is the secret weapon. She created the No and Tell program and is magical when it comes to that. Mallory wants to know, from a competitive, non-competitive retail landscape, what or who untraditional retailers do you look at who are rising stars of store design and merchandising besides Story and Camp?
Well, Rachel likes Schofield. Do you want to talk about that?
Why are you creating drama unnecessarily?
Because there hasn't been any on this call.
Okay. On a merchandising side, I really like this newsletter I get daily. It's one of the only emails I actually open, called Collagery. I'm going to type it in here, looking at my phone, how to spell it because I can't spell. But for those who want a high-touch curated experience, you know, from a merchandising standpoint, I just love getting their emails. I don't know. I'm obsessed with the Dries Van Noten store that opened in Los Angeles.
North Face, your North Face thing.
North Face and Gucci.
Yeah, you love that. Well, it's a new thing.
Yeah, that's a new thing. I like interesting stuff, right? Like that's unexpected, or yeah. Now I just need to figure out how to get one of those jackets. What about you? Anyone on your radar?
Honestly, I haven't seen anything in physical retail since last March. So no, I've been home and in our stores, but nowhere else.
Rachel, what's your biggest learning from taking Story to Macy's? How much time do
I have to go, actually. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll answer these last couple of questions and I'll bid you adieu, Ben.
Bye, Rachel. Thanks for letting me crash. Thanks for everyone who tried.
To answer the question, what was my biggest learning? You know what? There were lots of learnings, but that's why I did it. The whole, you know, for me, moving on, you know, from being an independent company to part of a bigger company was really about learning about scale and looking under the hood of a car of a multi-billion-dollar retailer. So that was kind of my whole goal in doing the partnership. And I had 2 great years of autonomy and learning. I mean, I think the answer to the question is less specific to Macy's and more overall. I think that, you know, in general, it's hard being a public company trying, you know, things that are longer term in vision and timeline to realize some of those changes. And that's why I made the comment earlier about Selfridges being private versus other department stores. But I think, you know, one of the things that I think worked well, or from my opinion at least did, is when we started there, we spent a tremendous amount of time meeting with internal stakeholders and kind of said, hey, for the type of business that we have, we need to do things differently. But, you know, we don't know what we don't know. So kind of, unlike my opportunity doing Story by myself early on, what was nice about the experience with Macy's was getting to meet with literally hundreds and hundreds of different colleagues, from store construction to finance to operation, to say, hey, we want to onboard and work with non-EDI compliant small vendors, or we want to reimagine training. You know, how can we do it differently, but within the Macy's ecosystem? And so there were a tremendous amount of learnings on that front for sure. What's been the greatest lessons learned from Story based on what you assumed would work a certain way at first, but didn't end up happening as expected? I mean, that's the story of Story. I mean, everything wasn't necessarily as we expected, but the nice thing about, you know, a model that is transparent about evolution and changing and being reactive, that really became part of the journey. So it was never like something didn't work. It was just new intel that contributed to whatever that new, you know, form or format would be. Nothing comes to mind as a specific example. All right, I'm going to see if there's any more questions before I bid everyone adieu. Please share the name. Yes, I will share the name of the store I mentioned. And then, so it's Dries Van Noten. It's a fashion designer, but I'm trying to pull up. He did a podcast for the business. Here we go. I'm going to put this in there. Oops. So here's a podcast that I'm sharing that talks all about the new store in Los Angeles. What's next for me? Also the artist, Ben shared that link for CJ Handry. He's shared it above. I'll copy it again. The artist worth following is CJ. Any other questions before I go, folks? What's next for me? I don't know. I'm doing some consulting right now. I'm doing a project for Sonos. I'm on the board at camp, obviously, and working a lot with Ben on camp. And, I'll probably cook up trouble and think of something else. But for now, I'm just doing a little consulting here and there. Liz wants to know which North Face experience. Oh, if you just Google Gucci and the North Face, it's a new collaboration that they just launched. The photography is amazing. They're doing pop-ups in different places. I just thought it was like a really nice, complementary, interesting mashup of brand partners. All right, last call, going once, going twice. Any final questions before I bid everyone adieu? Thanks for joining the session. I've never done one of these live like this, and I really enjoyed it. But I will give 30 seconds for any burning final questions. I will gladly answer. Otherwise, I wish you all a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of Retail Innovation Week.